Okay, so we're gonna try this again. What I've done here is I took my mill dust. I usually make my videos and I try to make them short and sweet, but I wind up blowing past a lot of details. So I'm gonna take a moment and calm down and talk through this to try to actually convey a little more information than what I usually do. I don't want to make it long, but I hate blowing past details. So this is another test of a motor that's weighted to simulate what the two-stage rocket is going to weigh. Notice that the weights are now up here on the motor. There aren't any weights on the tail end of the stick. What I've managed to do there is I got the center of gravity far below the center of pressure. And you'll notice in that other video that the flying stick is basically what this is. Got above the trees where the air will be moving more strongly, and then it started whipping around because the center of pressure, being ahead of the center of gravity, was able to leverage the flying stick basically around the top side of the center of gravity instead of, unfortunately, the bottom side. The bottom side would have kept it going up, and the top side means it wiggles all over the place, and that's evidenced in that video. So notice that I have put the weights up on the top, which seems counterintuitive, but that's going to work much better. This motor is, I took mill dust straight out of the mill. I wet it. I forget now exactly. I made notes. I did like 10%. I did 10%, and then I did another 5%, then another 5%, then another 5% of water, I believe it was. It was on 50 grams, I put in 10 grams of water, and then that wasn't wet enough, and I added 5 grams of water. And then I added another 2.5 grams of water, not wet enough, another 2.5 grams of water, not wet enough. Finally, with the last 2.5 gram increment of water, seemed like it was wet enough, it would ball up nicely, and then I screen meshed it and made granules that way. Just forced it through a screen. I believe I used a number 12 mesh screen, and I got granules. I put those in my dehydrator and got those dry and crispy and crunchy really quickly. I poured it into a small ball milled it right back to mill dust, and then I added the 3% by weight like I normally would for pressing a motor, and I pressed the motor with that. So this has been super wetted, dried, dampened, and put into the motor like I normally would. Normally I'd come right out of the ball mill, put 3% by weight of water to it, press a motor, and that's been working. That first Patriot flight, even the second Patriot flight where the parachute didn't deploy, both of those flew on motors. All of my motors up to this point have flown just fine on mill dust with 3% water by weight. Like I said, it's been suggested that my black powder would be much more powerful if I would wet it more. So that's what this test is for. Obviously, it's a very complicated process, or it's got many steps. Not very complicated. It's got many steps. Mill dust, super wet, granulate through a screen, dry it, crush it, back to dust, add 3%, and then press the motor. There's a lot of extra steps in there. I'll try to find a better process once I see that this works. Now, what's going to happen here is we're going to be testing two things. One, we're going to see how well this flies with this much weight. Two, this one may blow out just like the one did yesterday. Now, the one yesterday had been, I had wet granulated, and then with those two rocket motors that I've shot before, videos that exploded, I just took the dry granules and tried pressing them. I tried pressing them to the same amount of PSI that I would normally use for my dampened composition, and that obviously didn't work. It left fractures in the grain, and they both exploded. I tried wetting the granules on a motor. That's what I shot yesterday, where it blew the top and the bottom out of it, blew the nozzle out, and blew the rest of the fuel grain out of the top and the clay plug. I mean, it gutted the motor casing. So that may have, but because it had been super wetted, may have impacted something. It may have gotten a minor fracture, just one or something like that during the drying process. I don't know. This has been done in a much more controlled manner. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try this and see if this works. Now, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to fly fantastically, but not really any more peppy than what I've had before, but it's going to fly well. In which case, if it doesn't fly with any more pep, then I know, okay, well, that extra step of wetting and granulating and drying and whatever, those extra steps are not necessary. I guess one of three things is going to happen. The other thing is it might take off like a scalded ape, even with all this weight on it, in which case I know, oh, hey, that does work better. because you saw what the one did with the weights before on the tail. You still can see the lethargic lift off. You know, if this thing takes off like a scalded ape, then I know, okay, I made it more powerful. Or the third thing that's going to happen is it's going to purge the contents of this motor, top and bottom. Nozzle come out, fuel grain go up, and that's going to indicate that I actually have made a more powerful black powder. And what I need to do is shorten that starter core on my end burner tooling. So Hartford, we're going to step back here like we've done before. We're going to get to a safer distance just in case it catastrophically fails and blows something.
I wetted it, Dad.
Yes.
You said you did it.
Okay, well, we did it. Sorry, I'm just trying to...
You didn't do the wetting. I did that wet. I wetted it.
Okay, give me a countdown.
3, 2.
Oh, wow. I lost it trying to film it. Okay, wow, that worked. I can't say that it was any more powerful than the one that took off yesterday that was done with a dampened mix. But obviously putting the weight at the top, I'll have to go find that in a minute. Obviously putting the weight at the top, getting that center of gravity ahead of the center of pressure really matters. So there you go. There's a video reference for whether or not the CPCG orientation is important. I'll go find that, and then I'll watch the video later and kind of compare the lift off of the two to see if it was worth the extra steps there to super wet that stuff prior to making the motor with it.